75% of the people believe that this country's going in the wrong direction. And I gotta tell you, I'm one of those people as well. I am frustrated by what's going on in Congress. I'm frustrated by the direction of our country. I ran for Congress as somebody who had experience as a prosecutor, in which there was an ability to look at challenges and to get things done. And certainly the recognition that Washington is not an easy place to just automatically get things done. I've been as frustrated as many of you have been. In the course of this 8 months that I've had to be able to be your representative, I also feel we've got great challenges ahead of us, and I have a sense of confidence that we can work and have an impact on the problems, the huge issues that we face, and most importantly, just the ability to deal with not just the challenges, but to be able to overcome those challenges and to turn over to this next generation the kind of America that we have, that I certainly believe that I have inherited. Right now, if you look at the issues that are before us, the top issue, unquestionably, when I talk to folks, houses all across the country, has been jobs. The unemployment rate is now on a sustained level, in excess of 9% for almost 21, 23 months. Now, here in Pennsylvania, things are a little bit better, but the fact of the matter is, it's been up there around 7.9%. If you're one of those people who's unemployed, whose families are facing the struggles of today, these are real issues to you. And one of the things that somewhat concerns you begin to see is while we're going downward at a certain point, we're beginning to see an uptick again. It could be the beginning of a double-dip recession. There's a lot of challenges to job creation and to economic growth. But one of the things that I think is the greatest problem, when I've talked to people who are out there, who are small business people and others who are job creators, it's the sense of uncertainty that is out there in our economy. Businesses of all sizes who create jobs need to be able to plan. They have to have some sense of what the future is going to hold in order to be able to calculate what it is that they can do. So much of what's coming out of Washington right now is creating uncertainty, unpredictability, from regulations to taxes to other kinds of issues that are making people reluctant to take risks, that are making households and families reluctant to spend money to create the demand that will keep people employed. Another huge issue that we're facing is the overall destabilizing record debt that we are facing as a nation. Bankrupt businesses cannot create jobs. A bankrupt nation cannot create jobs as well. Right now, we are looking at an annual deficit of a little over $1.4 trillion a year, and a national debt that exceeds $14.5 trillion. All of these have an impact. Another factor that I think creates the unpredictability is the complexity of our tax code. It manifests itself in a number of ways. Certainly, we're dealing right now with a tax code that is some 17,000 pages long, 20 separate volumes. And since 1995, when the last time was, or 1986, there has been some 15,000 changes that have been made to the tax code. As a result, the complexity of it alone creates difficulty on not only businesses but individuals as well. One of the things that we need to be able to do is to simplify that, and in addition, in my mind, be able to create a circumstance in which, as part of the simplification of that, we can reduce corporate tax rates. Simultaneously, in exchange for reducing those corporate tax rates, look at a real effort to remove the loopholes, some of the other subsidies that are associated with that. And the last thing that I think impacts the whole sense of uncertainty that's related to the environment right now in which we are having difficulty creating jobs is the red tape that is out there, the regulation that is taking place right now. And there is a role. There's a role for appropriate government oversight. There's a role for appropriate agency oversight. But I suggest to you right now that we are out of balance. And we've seen an over-regulation that is beginning to have an impact on everyday business people. I sat down and had breakfast, and I've been doing this right when I came in. I'm looking just trying to get different groups of people together. So I called up and I asked, and I got about 20 to 25 contractors who are in our area. It's larger contractors to small business people that have small operations. And almost to a person, they were telling me that first, they're facing incredibly difficult margins. Everybody's competing for a smaller and smaller percentage of the pie just to keep people working. And yet, they are being overwhelmed with regulations and requirements simply to report back on audits and other things that are coming from a broad spectrum of numbers of these regulatory agencies. It's having an effect of killing jobs. And that's one of the things we've got to work on. Let me tell you about what I think is one of the great challenges we face. And that, of course, is the exploding annual debt. Nothing says it better than this. And certainly, during the close of the Bush administration, Republicans were responsible as well for the beginning of this. But when you look at 2008, and we talk about the level of that, the deficit, you see the increase to 2009, and where we are right now, with $1.4 trillion. $1.4 trillion is the deficit. That's how much more we're spending each year than we're taking in revenues. I think what this really indicates as well is that's not one of the things everybody suggests is a one-time burst by virtue of what happened, in the stimulus package. The fact of the matter is, if you project that out, this kind of a spending trend will continue to track all the way through to, you see it beginning to grow again in 2021. It's unsustainable. It will have a remarkable impact on our ability to continue to grow jobs. It only gets worse over the long term. So who owns this debt? That's another question that's being asked. Or I should say, you go back here, let's go back to the other side. When you talk about, once again, the crushing burden of the debt, as these things begin to compound, that's what we're looking at over the long term. You see that during World War II, we had a spike. And then what has been a consistent percentage until it started to grow again in 2010. But as they project that debt out, you begin to see the remarkable path. That's the Congressional Budget Office and the Office of Management and Budget. That is their projections about where we're going. Unsustainable. So who owns this debt? That's the next question that we'll begin to look at and say, who are the people who, well, in 1970, about 5% of our debt was held by foreign nations. In other words, the Treasury Department has to float bonds to pay for all of these promises and good things that we are making. And in 1970, about 5% of that was borrowed from foreign countries. In 1990, that amount was $2.4 trillion that we were effectively borrowing, and about 19% of it came from foreign countries. Today, it's $8.4 trillion, and more than half of it is coming from Japan and China. And if you ask me, the fact of the matter is, as we're looking at what's happening right now, one of the great difficulties for us as a nation is to be able to deal in an international way with a country like China when they're holding close to 30% of our debt. I don't want to have to be in a situation in which they're able to have such an influence over our economy. Take the spending. One of the things is oftentimes millions and trillions. It becomes difficult to try to put into a context. But one of the things we look to be simple, well, let's take that back and put it in the context. If you were a typical family in our district, and it's roughly about a typical family in our district, median income about $56,000 a year. Well, if that family was the United States government acting as it currently does, this is what their economic picture, this is what their household picture would look like right now. They would be making $56,000 a year, but they would be spending $79,000 a year. Now, how many of your families are spending $79,000 if you're taking in $56,000 in income? But most significantly, in addition, they have a credit card debt. Credit card debt, $300,000. $300,000. That is the long-term debt that we are looking at as a nation compared to where we are right here. So what are the steps in short order? The first thing is to get our fiscal house in order. I believe that is one of the first things that we need to do. And certainly we're going to have to work together in the United States Congress, with the President, and with everyone to begin to look at the issues that are driving our debt, which means we're going to have to come together in a fashion that allows us to look in the long term to deal with the programs that are driving the cost to such an extent, which include Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid. We're going to have to find a bipartisan way to come to grips with those issues. I also think this is an opportunity as well for us as a nation to deal with another thing that's before us, which is the potential for a balanced budget amendment. It was just 1995 it came into one vote being passed before. This would give each and every one of you a chance to weigh in on the question as to whether we are a nation run the way many states do, run the way many families do, which is in effect to be spending more than we get to bring in. This may be an issue that will actually get some traction in the future Congress. It's not guaranteed, but it certainly has been proposed and is part of, at this point in time, one of the factors in this current resolution. I think the second step is to make America just a better place to do business. I talked before about the idea of first to beginning, creating certainty. We talked about tax reform. And the second thing to do is to rein in the bureaucracy in a way in which we appreciate the fact that there needs to be reasonable regulation, but we can't allow it to operate in such a way that it has a dramatically disproportionate impact on the ability for Americans to create jobs, the ability for Americans to go to work. I do think that there are solutions, and I'll conclude my observations at the outset by saying that I'm optimistic that we as a nation can deal with this. But the challenges are real. The challenges are great. And as you can see, Washington is not the most functional place right now. We've got to find a way to do better. So I want to thank you for the chance to visit you here today. We have a series of these and have been doing a series of these today. Here till 3 o'clock. I'll be delighted to answer the questions as we go forward until that time. So what I would ask that you do is to raise your hand and to ask the question. And I will do my best to try to repeat the question and then do my best to answer. I will ask one thing as well. I appreciate that people have perspectives. You've got to make something that is a statement. Please do it and get your questions so we can get the maximum number of people that have an opportunity to ask. So let me start here with you, Meehan.
Thank you. Meehan, my name is Michelle Green. I'm a practical attorney in Pennsylvania. I'm interested in learning whether or not you are a supporter of the Return to Prudent Banking Act, formerly known as the Glass-Steagall Act. Are you a co-sponsor? Are you going to vote for it? Or do you support President Obama's view that the Dodd-Frank bill of last year solved all of our financial problems?
The question was whether I would support the idea of the Glass-Steagall Act. Now, once again, the Glass-Steagall Act deals with
It provides a wall between the investment banking ability of banks and the commercial banking, which deals with common people. Doesn't allow banks to take risks and use other people's money for their services.
The Glass-Steagall Act